All right, everyone, we are back with another episode of the Kyle Lanslone Show. Very excited for everything I have planned today. I am rolling solo, but I got a lot to talk about here, so I think you're going to enjoy this episode. Starting off with Al Qaeda is welcomed in New York City. Absolutely unbelievable. Zelensky emboldened by Trump. Iran says it will never develop nukes, and Kamala can't escape her genocidal legacy. That'll be a fun one to end the week if we have time for it. So let's jump right into it today. Let's play this clip of Abu Mohammed al-Jolani, veteran of Al-Qaeda in Iraq, founder of Al-Qaeda's affiliate in Syria, sitting down with former retired General David Petraeus in New York City earlier this week.
As you know, Mr. President, I spent over 37 years in the U.S. Army, and I was a soldier, not a diplomat. So I hope you'll forgive me if I speak with the directness of the old soldier that I am as I get the first question out of the way. Because the fact is that we were on different sides when I was commanding the surge in Iraq. You were, of course, detained by U.S. forces for some 5 years, including, again, when I was the 4-star there. And here you are now as the president of Syria. I just want you to tell you, really on behalf of all the people who are here, that this conversation has truly filled me with enormous hope. It has been very, very heartening and illuminating. Your vision is powerful and clear. Your demeanor itself is very impressive as well. How are you holding up under all this pressure? Are you getting enough sleep at night? Again, I've been there, and it is so very, very hard. And your many fans, and I am one of them, we do have worries.
I mean, what the hell is happening here? This is utterly disgusting. Look, I'm anti-war. I'm non-interventionist. I want to make deals with all the people all over around the world. Bring our troops home. Russia, China, India, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, all these countries, North Korea, we could easily end our hostile relationship with those countries while giving up nothing that harms the American people. If there is a group of people around the world that the American national security state should be concerned with, a group of people around the world who actually consider themselves the enemies of the American people and want to do harm to the American people, it is the Al-Qaeda style jihadists that this man, again, now he goes by Ahmed al-Shara. He's gone through this rebrand. He puts on his suit. He trims his beard. And suddenly the State Department drops the $10 million bounty on his head. Abu Mohammed al-Jolani is a jihadist. He has appointed jihadists, international jihadists, to help him rule Syria. His forces have conducted and instituted Sharia law. They've conducted ethnic cleansing campaign, thousands of Alawites, hundreds of Druze, slaughters in hospitals, just, making people beg like dogs. ISIS-style cruel execution tactics. And why? Because he comes from the Al-Qaeda mold. In fact, when, the founder of ISIS, the leader, most famous leader of ISIS, al-Baghdadi, Jolani at one point was his number 2 before he broke off and decided to form the Syria affiliate of Al-Qaeda rather than being a part of the Islamic State. And so this man is an absolute nut job, an absolute enemy of the American people, and he has been welcomed in New York City. Why? This is all a part of this, geopolitical issue involving Russia and Israel. So let me explain here. The former leader of Syria was Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad, he tortured people. He was cruel to his political opposition. He cracked down on dissenters. If I were a Syrian, I wouldn't want to live under Bashar al-Assad. That being said, he didn't conduct ethnic-based violence. He did allow for the Syrian people to not live under Islamic law. People are, free to worship how they chose. And most importantly, as the standpoint of an American, he was firmly opposed to the jihadist groups like al-Nusra and ISIS. And so With that said, the US, rather than, we don't have to back Syria, we don't have to help Assad. We just have to not, actively try to undermine Assad's rule in Syria as he's hunting down Al Qaeda and ISIS. But we do the opposite. We pour money into the Syrian opposition that, as our current director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has said time and time again, we knew that CIA program where we were giving money to the Syrian opposition, claiming they were the moderate rebels, we knew they were all Jolani style jihadists, absolute head chopping nut jobs, people who actually wanted to conduct terrorist attacks in the West. And so we fueled that opposition to Assad. We sanctioned his government. And why? Because Assad was an ally of both Russia and Iran. So, from the Israeli standpoint, it was good to take Iran down a peg, right? Syria allowed for the Russians, not the Russians, excuse me, the Iranians to funnel arms to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And also, under Assad, Syria did have a military. They had Russian S-400 missile, S-300 missile defense systems and other air defense systems. And under al-Shara, under Jolani, Israel has destroyed all of that. And so Israel enacted this policy where they thought that they could weaken Iran, and they didn't care. They knew, they understood that the opposition to Assad was made up of Al-Qaeda, but they didn't care. They were happy anybody but Assad. That way they could break the ties between Damascus and Tehran. Now from there, they've exploited the fact that Jolani is a terrorist. So after years and well over a decade and a half of the US, Israel, or other partners in the Middle East backing Jolani, his band of jihadist nutjobs, right, supporting them against Assad. Once Assad falls, then Tel Aviv goes, "Oh my God, there's jihadists in Damascus." Not, and Netanyahu even said before that Israel helped to bring down the fall of Bashar al-Assad. So now Israel says we have to bomb every military base and seize the large swath of southern Syria. So you see how well this has worked for the Israelis. Additionally, the US had been building up towards and getting more and more hostile with Russia, particularly after the coup in Ukraine really blew up in their faces and Russia ends up seizing the Crimean Peninsula. And so then we decide that also we overthrow Bashar al-Assad. That hurts Russia. It takes away one of Russia's allies in the Middle East. And so we thought this was a really good policy. Not we as in me and you, but the US government, our deep state. They advocated for this policy of overthrowing Bashar al-Assad, even if it ushered in a jihadist revolution, because they have these paranoid fantasies and these ideas that you constantly have to be working against the people that you label an enemy, and that's Russia and Iran. Again, not the enemies of the American people. We actually bat the enemies of the American people to go after the people that our deep state wanted to go after. So I couldn't be more disgusted. I grew up in my formative years were in the years after 9/11, right? I was 10 years old on 9/11. So I remember every Super Bowl growing up, every Christmas growing up. At school they taught us about the little, what was it, blue, yellow, orange, red terrorism level. And you would watch the news, and today there's an orange alert because we got intelligence that Al-Qaeda was planning to carry out an attack in some American city, harm, maybe a concert, harm some little girl, something crazy like this. There's always this plot coming from Al-Qaeda. We constantly have to live in fear of these people. And then whenever we decide, oh no, now we want to go after Russia, we're willing to embrace Al-Qaeda. The American people should not stand for this. This should absolutely be unacceptable. Every single American politician, political leader, former general who shook hands with Jelani and embraced him in New York City should be run out of the country by the American people. We should hate these people. We should boo them wherever they go. They should not be allowed to get away with embracing the people that are our enemies because they think it serves their greater geopolitical goals of taking Iran down a peg or removing a Russian ally in the Middle East. This kind of thinking, it just cannot, these kind of events cannot be allowed to happen. So, really want to start off the show there today and hammer home the point that I know there's a lot going on in the US right now, and this is almost flown under the radar. That again, somebody who fought against American forces for Al Qaeda in Iraq in the Iraq War is now embraced in New York City. This is a time too where we're excluding Palestinian representatives and representatives from other countries who aren't terrorists, who aren't a part of groups that ever carried out attacks on American soil, and yet here we're embracing the jihadist leader of Syria. It's absolutely disgusting. I couldn't be more upset with it. Want to move on here and talk about Zelensky getting emboldened. Chris, let's play this first clip of Zelensky reacting to Trump's post where he said that Ukraine could win the war and Russia was a paper tiger.
I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience, and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option. Are you surprised to hear that?
A little bit. A little bit. I mean, I'm sure in my people, in my army, and I'm sure in strengthening of in support of the United States. But President Trump was more positive in it, and he showed that he wants to support Ukraine to the very end. So we understand now that we are ready to finish this war as quick as possible. And he wants, and I want, and our people want. But he understands that Putin doesn't want, and he understands that he is not winning, but he says to everybody that he will win. And I see very, it was a little bit surprise for me, you're right. I was very positive signals from the side that Trump and America will be with us to the end of the war. Yes, as we will see,
yeah.
Right? We will see, but God bless, it will be so.
I really want to explain what happened here. Donald Trump put out a post where he said that Ukraine was going to win the war. Russia's a paper tiger. The Russian economy is in trouble. And then he goes at the UN and says NATO should shoot down Russian jets that enter Allied airspace. Later that day, the White House clarified that that's just rhetoric. It's meant as a negotiating tactic to push Putin to the table. It doesn't reflect any American change in policy towards Ukraine. So Trump isn't considering giving Ukraine the tens or hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons they need to win this war. This isn't a message to Vladimir Putin, or this is a message to Vladimir Putin, not Zelensky. However, Zelensky, as we've seen, isn't that effective of a leader. You do wonder if maybe Trump doesn't understand that this man really seems to have a problematic cocaine habit. And when you tell somebody who has an addiction like that they're going to win the war and they're going to do all those great things, they don't understand that this is really just a part of the negotiation tactic. And now Zelensky thinks, hell yeah, I got Trump on my side. I'm going to go out and win this war. This is really, really bad for the Ukrainians. Let me explain. What Trump should be pressing Zelensky to do is to make a deal with Russia. Explain to Zelensky that he has an opportunity before his military collapses to prevent Russia from seizing Ukraine's entire Black Sea coastline, from really turning Ukraine into a rump state of nothing but probably, neo-Nazi leadership, a Ukrainian nationalist hellhole. Right? Zelensky has an opportunity to prevent that at this point by ceding the territory. Russia's already conquered a little bit of territory in the Donbass and then calling an end to this conflict and agreement of neutrality. But Donald Trump isn't relaying that message to Zelensky. He's telling him he could win the war. If Zelensky thinks that, one of two things are going to happen. Ukraine is going to run out of manpower, or the weapons shortage is going to take hold. Look, Zelensky says that his country needs $60 billion in weapons to fund the war in 2026. Right now, I think NATO has pledged about to buy $2 billion in U.S. weapons. That means he needs an additional $58 billion. If Trump isn't going to send $30-40 billion, the Europeans aren't going to be able to cover the rest. And that means Ukraine isn't going to have the weapons they need to win this conflict. And the Ukrainian military will collapse, and Zelensky will be negotiating with Putin from a barrel of a gun. And rather than it being any kind of back and forth and Russia making any kind of compromises, Putin is going to dictate terms to Zelensky, and he's either going to sign on the dotted line, or Putin will find some other comedian to stick into the Ukrainian presidential office. That's what's going to happen here. And so, without Zelensky understanding that reality, deciding to fight on, he is going to cost his country and the people of Ukraine so much, not only just in the short run with the lives lost, but also a lot of their sovereignty, a lot of their territory, a lot of their ability. Again, their Black Sea coastline is key to having access to the Black Sea. They could lose all of that. Absolutely crazy that Donald Trump is not communicating this right message to Zelensky. Now, I do wonder if, again, Trump, the White House is saying this is negotiating tactics, but it must also have some piece of the whole dynamic that you've always had with Donald Trump, which is he seems to believe and reflect publicly whatever the last person who spoke to him said. And so right now it seems unbelievably Mike Waltz, the baboon who led to the signal scandal, where the man can't even figure out how to use the appropriate communication channels as the national security advisor, doesn't know how to appropriately have a group conversation digitally with a group of people to decide if we're going to go to war in Yemen. I mean, you would think that they would just like to engage in the ritual as, being a part of the performance. Oh, we got to use the super top secret messaging service. It's so cool kind of thing. No, he's just a complete and utter idiot who would actually start a signal chat, include an unfriendly journalist, and then have a whole conversation about planning the war in Yemen. I mean, this man should not be able to come within 100 miles of Donald Trump because he's obviously too stupid. But yet he has Donald Trump's ear. Keith Kellogg, a man who's been throughout this war advocating for the U.S. to install a no-fly zone over Ukraine, meaning shoot down Russian warplanes as they're over Ukraine, directly going to war with Russia. This man has advocated from the very beginning of the conflict. Trump is listening to him. This cannot be allowed to happen. Trump obviously just doesn't even have the cognitive awareness at this point to go talk to his vice president, J.D. Vance or Tulsi Gabbard or anybody with some sanity and will believe the just most outrageous statements that members of his administration will tell him. Now, somebody else who seems to like all this an awful lot is our old friend from Lindsey Graham, old friend from South Carolina, Senator Lindsey Graham. Let's play this next clip.
Trump 2028. I hope this never ends. When he asks, what should you do if a Russian jet flies into your country? Shoot it down. He's tried to go out of his way to get Putin to the table. We don't want to humiliate Russia. We just want to end the war. And to our friends in Russia, here's what Trump did today. He told NATO, I'll sell you all the weapons you want. You can provide them to Ukraine. And as to Ukraine, you can use them any way you want. So to the Russian military, you're going to be up against the high-end American weapons that will be sold to NATO for the benefit of Ukraine. And this war is coming to your backyard here with no limitations like Biden.
Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, look how happy Lindsey Graham is. Anytime he's happy, you should know you should probably be unhappy. He thinks that he is winning the battle for Trump's brain when it comes to the Ukraine policy. And this is concerning because the Senate is really pushing for this new bill that I think is going to absolutely destroy the American economy. 500% tariffs is what he's talking about placing on India, China, possibly Brazil, as a result of this bill that Lindsey Graham wants to pass, putting Russia and Belarus on the state sponsor and terrorism list. And ultimately, what they really want to do is sell Ukraine more weapons. And so Lindsey Graham's excited. I'm sure he's thinking of some new schemes and working with the Ukrainians to make sure that the U.S. weapons to Ukraine continue to flow. This is I'm not happy that Lindsey Graham is so happy here. All right, before we get into the next subject, I do want to mention the sponsor of today's program, and that is the Expat Money Summit 2025. This is an annual online event put on by Mikhail Thorup, the host of the Expat Money Show, and he explains how to craft your perfect plan B. If you want to leave the United States, where can you buy property abroad? What's the tax situation like? How to get a second passport? It may be helpful in the coming years. All these things will be answered at the Expat Money Summit, and you can get your free ticket to the online event. It's from October 10th to the 12th, so definitely want to start getting those, claiming those free tickets soon at expatmoneysummit.com. Now, if you want to get access to the VIP portion of the event, there's a lot of great stuff for free. So if you just want the free ticket, that's great. But if you want access to the VIP portion of the event, you could get that 20% off using the promo code Kyle. With the VIP ticket, you can rewatch all the events at the conference and get access to some exclusive panels. I will be on one of those talks with Dave DeCamp. Really looking forward to it. So again, expatmoneysummit.com, promo code Kyle. All right, let's jump back into it. Next up here, I want to talk about the Iran nuclear negotiations, what's happening with the Iranian nuclear energy program. And so I have this clip of the Iranian president speaking at the UN to play.
I hereby declare once more before this assembly that Iran has never sought and will never seek to build a nuclear bomb. We do not seek nuclear weapons. This is our belief based on the edict issued by the supreme leader and by religious authorities. Therefore, we never sought weapons of mass destruction, nor will we ever seek them. Whereas those who disturb the peace and stability in the region lies in Israel, but Iran is the one that is being punished for those actions. There is a poem that roughly says something to the effect that someone in one side of the world does something to disturb the peace and someone else is punished for those actions.
So a lot of important information here. One, the Iranian president is talking about the long-standing Iranian policy. It's religious policy. The Ayatollah has issued a fatwa saying that the Islamic Republic will never develop chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. Gareth Porter, the great investigative journalist, has done a lot of really good work. Don't want to take the time to recap it all on today's show, showing that Iran never had a nuclear weapons program, and there's no evidence that they were ever working on a bomb. There's a lot of talk. There's some speculation that they were working on a nuclear bomb before 2003, but certainly since then, in the past two decades, Iran was never working on a likely bomb, and they likely never were even before that. However, there's this whole narrative that's been going on my entire lifetime, from when I can remember watching the news until now. I can remember Benjamin Netanyahu saying, Iran's about to get a bomb, Iran's about to get a bomb, Iran's about to give a bomb. And oh man, Iran could give those weapons to the terrorists. They could wipe the state of Israel off the map. And they're always weeks, months away from doing it. If we don't stop Iran now, they're going to get a nuclear bomb. And so everybody just assumes, well, Iran must have a nuclear weapons program if they're going to have a nuclear bomb soon. And that has never been the case. All lies, all the way. But that lie has so deeply infested the American political thinking that more Americans think Iran has a nuclear bomb than Israel has a nuclear bomb. And so this misinformation is really problematic. Now, I do want to update some kind of recent news when it comes to Iran's nuclear program and talks over the past few weeks. Of course, before June, when Israel went to war, unprovoked, aggressive war against Iran, targets their civilian nuclear facilities, targets their nuclear scientists, targets their military and civilian leadership of that country, pummels civilian targets, demands that millions of people evacuate from Tehran. The U.S. participates in the attack, by the way. That's a really important note to all this. Before that, Iran had allowed IAEA inspectors, that's the international watchdog on nuclear weapons, into their nuclear facilities to monitor what they were doing, to make sure and verify that Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon. After Israel's war, Tehran said, well, we think the IAEA is either infiltrated or working with the Israelis and providing, locations and vulnerabilities to some of our nuclear sites. And so predictably, they kicked the IAEA inspectors out of Iran. Now, there's been kind of back burner negotiations going on between the Iranians, the IAEA, and the Europeans. The Iranians said to Europe, hey, if you don't vote at the UN Security Council to place snapback sanctions on Iran, which are sanctions on Iran for their alleged nuclear program, then we will allow the IAEA inspectors back into Iran. Sounded like a pretty good deal. The Europeans, the IAEA, Tehran, they all agreed to it. And then this week, the Europeans went to the Security Council and they voted to place the sanctions back on Iran. And so Iran says, well, now the IAEA inspectors will not enter the Islamic Republic. Additionally, the Ayatollah said, really can't negotiate with the Americans right now. Their bottom line policy is that Iran has to agree to zero enrichment of uranium. What they use the enrichment program for is to turn, the nuclear waste into either nuclear fuel or use it to create medical isotopes used in like cancer treatments and things like that. They were willing to dilute their stockpile of 60% enriched uranium back down to 20%, where it's much more appropriate for medical and fuel grade, although 60% is well short of, I believe, like the 95 to 90% range that you would need to make a nuclear weapon. And so Iran didn't have a nuclear program, didn't have highly enriched uranium to make a nuclear weapon before, but they were willing to roll their nuclear program back even further to kind of double ensure everyone that they weren't making a nuclear bomb. There's no reason to have the constant hysteria and fear mongering about Iran on the brink of obtaining a nuclear weapon. And yet the Americans and the Europeans just undermine and undercut that deal. And so this, again, really goes back to something I was talking about with Andrew Day on the last episode of this show, that all these countries that are supposed enemies of the United States of America that we have to confront, that we have to take on, are really willing to make reasonable deals that will cost the American people nothing, that will endanger the American people 0%. No bad consequences for the American people whatsoever, but our government refuses to make the deal. All right, so want to talk about Kamala Harris here before we wrap up the show again. A little lighter note to end the week. Before I do, just want to remind people, share out the show if you can. We are trying to grow the channel here. We've had some, success so far, but we really like to pit that up. And we need all of you to help us kind of break the algorithm here. Of course, YouTube and the censors that be don't really want this message shared, so you have to help with that. And I appreciate it every time I see the show. Somebody posted it. It really does encourage me to keep doing this. The best thing you could do is subscribe on YouTube. And of course, actively engage in the chat. I see a lot of the usuals are in the chat today. So I do go back after the show and look through the chat. It's kind of hard to do while I'm live here. And Chris, let's go ahead and play this clip of Kamala Harris.
Talk to your president. Talk to somebody else.
I'm not president right now. There's nothing I can do.
So for anybody who couldn't hear very well during that first part, they're calling her out for a legacy of genocide, for supporting the genocide in Gaza as she was vice president and then the DNC candidate in 2024. And her response to that is, I'm not president right now. Like that somehow absolves her of her responsibility of sending Israel billions, tens of billions of dollars in weapons, as every single day they were slaughtering men, women, children, doctors, journalists, healthcare workers, aid workers, rescue workers, just innocent people, mothers, children in their tents, in their houses, blown to bits day after day after day after day. Kamala Harris supported all of that. And now she wants to say, I'm not president. Like that absolves her of the responsibility here. Kamala Harris you are a relatively one of the most important political figures in the Democratic Party. You are somebody who, when you want to, as you do right now, you could go on The View and Maddow and all the most prominent, left-wing shows, and you could tell people you have to be in the streets, you had to be demanding an end to the bloodshed, an end to the genocide, an end to the American support for the Israeli onslaught in Gaza, and she does none of that because that's not what she wants to do, because she supports the genocide as she did when she was vice president. So it has been somewhat enjoyable to see Kamala Harris really struggle through all these like softball interview and events she was doing. She absolutely floundered on Maddow and said that she didn't pick Pete Buttigieg as her vice presidential candidate because he was gay. She blamed the American people for being bigots, not her. The American people are the bigots. That's why. But, it almost makes me wish that she was president just so we could see the train wreck Kamala Harris show every day. But, Trump is doing a pretty good job of filling those idiotic shoes. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. For everybody in the chat, people watching, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, that you're sharing the show out on X and your favorite social media platforms. We'll be back with shows next week. I am unbelievably excited about the show on Monday. Matthew Ho will be on the show for the first time, and I can't wait to interview him. So make sure to subscribe to the show for that one, and I'll see you again soon.